Hello, beautiful people. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good week. I had a good week. I had an interesting week. Learned a lot. And this week we had 3 women on different platforms asking questions about uterine fibroids. Their questions were a little similar and a little bit different, but their questions were really important questions. And they want to know, like, how do they detoxify? Excuse me. How do they clean out their body? How do they shrink the fibroids? How do they stop bleeding so much? Right? So all those are associated with fibroids. And if you are one of the millions and millions and millions of women that have fibroids, you're going to want to stick around and spend this next hour with me, because it will really give you a whole different perspective and equip you with some tools to help you navigate the system and help you know what to do, what's right for you. Because you know what I really feel like this week has really given to me as I reflect on this week? One of my purposes in life, like when I distill down my life's work, doesn't matter what my profession is, but when I distill down my life's work to the most purest form, my role is to help preserve and protect the sanctity of women's bodies, of women's rights and choices, and to protect and preserve their uteruses, our womb spaces, even if the uterus has already been gone, but there's a space there, to protect that space, to honor our blood and our body and our tears and our emotions and our process. Like that's my role, right? That's my purpose. Also, I'm not just going to give you a list of what to eat and what to do, because you're listening to me, because also part of my purpose is to fully show up and be present, right? It's my presence, it's my personal experience, it's my professional experience, it's my history, it's my story, it's the modern mystic in me that's showing up in a way. That's why you're here. That's why you're attracted and gravitated and listening. And so I bow to you and honor you that you're here. And if this is your first time meeting me, my name is Maria Chaudhry, and I'm a midwife, and I'm an herbalist, and a mother, qigong practitioner, right? And I'm the creator of Birthsong Botanicals, and a protector of women's rights, right? And so Birthsong Botanicals is a whole full herbal line for women, for fertility and menstrual health, for pregnancy and birth and postpartum recovery, for breastfeeding moms with newborns and little babies, and for children so they can grow up healthy and strong, and for families so they can feel whole and complete. And so that's what Birthsong Botanicals is all about. And you can find out more about us and our products and our blog and YouTube channel and all the stuff that we do and share on our website on birthsongbotanicals.com. Okay? I want to remind you that this video, just like all my videos, this is for information. This is personal empowerment. This is for transformation. This is not a replacement for midwifery care or medical advice. And what you're going to do with this information, how you're going to integrate it, how you're going to incorporate it into your life, is your personal responsibility. And I'm giving this to you and sharing this to you and sharing myself with you because I trust you to do the right thing, right? And to share this with other people. It's like we're a candle. Have you ever been in a situation? I've been in this a few times, right? But not many, but a few times, like in masses where there's like hundreds of people, where there's one candle and we light one candle, and then the next person, before you know it, like there's thousands of people in the room, so there are people from all over the world, and before you know it, the whole world has been illuminated. So we're the candles, and I'm handing you the flame, and you're going to take that flame and you're going to light the flame, right? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today. Today we're going to be talking about fibroids and uteruses, but it's still part of the candle. Because we're women, right? We've been the care providers since the dawn of humanity. We've been the mothers, we've been the midwives, we've been the nurses, we've been the healers, we've been the doctors, we've been the leaders, oftentimes behind the scenes. But we've held, in qigong we talk about yin. Some people say, they say yin takes, like women take. I'm going to change that and say women hold. We hold, right? And so that's what we're doing right now. We're going to be lineage holders, and remember that we're, and our uteruses are bags of muscles that hold a lot of power, and they hold creativity, and they hold our feminine essence, and they hold life, right? And even if that uterus isn't there, you have that space. That space still holds and creates, and it's still very special, very sacred. Okay? So, the challenge that we face as these women that are natural minded, that we turn to herbs and we turn to prayer and meditation and we turn to each other for sisterhood and we turn to the earth for our medicine, right? The challenge that we face is we have a few more parts than men do, right? We have this uterus and we have these ovaries and these fallopian tubes, and we have all this power, and we have all this extra parts that like need care, and they actually need an extra level of care and awareness and mindfulness to be healthy. And the modern medicine doesn't really know how to do it, and so they're trying to help really, but most throughout history it's mainly been that our power is frightening, and so it needs to be controlled and it needs to be eradicated and removed from the scene. And so here we are, we're the daughters of our ancestors, and we're coming back, right? We're blooming back up, right? We're standing back up, and we're standing together. And so we still have this uphill battle, because we are, I don't want to say battle, but we're like keeping on one step at a time, finding our way up the mountain. Because the modern medicine, although there have been so many improvements, they still don't understand, and herbalists don't even all the way understand what causes some things like infertility and fibroids and cysts and a lot of things. We don't fully understand it. Although our methods in the medical community have improved, still the methods don't know how to get to the root cause, to the origin. And so then these medical approaches don't really solve the problem. They, in some ways, really still perpetuate it. Okay? And so when we're women and we're faced with fibroids, and you do a Google search, I just did that. Preparing for this talk, I got to spend time with some of my old friends. Aviva Ram, Rosemary Gladstar, Susan Weed, right? With myself, with my memory, with my own womb, right? So that's the vast majority. But then when I go on the internet, I don't find those people right off the bat. I find all the surgeries right off the bat, and all the like mainstream things, and although they're helpful, some of them are really helpful, it's just incomplete. Right? So I want to try to bring some of these pieces together. And I want to just stay here just for a little bit longer and say that, yes, because I want to kind of start talking about these medical procedures and hysterectomies and things like that. And I want to talk about still not standing against a hysterectomy, but standing for protecting your body. And how to stand for protecting your body is through understanding. And it's through patience, and it's through going inside your body and trying things out. And it's through all these really small foundational pieces that we have to do every day. However, what tends to be when you do a Google search are all these things that don't really require you to do that, right? You just sign up and make an appointment, and they're just going to take care of it for you. And those things sometimes are, from my perspective, they're the final choice, like the ultimate. You've tried all these other things, and they're like the last choice, right? And at least you have that, and grateful that we have that foundation, we have that option. But it's not the starting point, it's the last one. Because when we start with the last thing, the most extreme, the most radical, the biggest thing, it perpetuates stress. And when you have an extreme surgery and then you have all the stress wrapped around that, it is just spiraling you more and more away from your center and more away from where you need to be. So I'm going to come back to the topic of stress near the end. I'm going to cycle back through the topic of stress. And I want to just say one more little thing about hysterectomies is, like, of course, we can live without a uterus. We can still breathe. We can walk around. We can talk. We can live fulfilling, creative, fruitful lives, right? We're still women. We're still feminine and sensual and powerful and beautiful and magic, right? However, it is like my comparison, and really Rosemary Glassstars who said this, and I totally agree with her, is that like when we save a woman's life by providing medical care, that's what we're supposed to do, and that's life-saving, and that is absolute and appreciative, and we do that in gratitude and reverence and respect. But when we're in a non-life-threatening situation and we take out a woman's uterus for fibroids because the woman didn't have the full picture, she wasn't informed, and she was afraid, and she was in pain and bleeding, and the person she talked to said to do this, and they're experts, and so she trusted the expert. And having trust, that's a wonderful thing, right? So you want to instill trust, but nonetheless, it's a non-life-saving surgery, and that's just like going into your body or going into the earth and just taking a jewel out, right? And leaving it a hole of nothing and replacing it with nothing, right? That is, it's tragic. And there are like 40 to 50, I have the stats here, 40 to 50% of American women will have a hysterectomy by the age of 65. That means there's 2 women, one is going to have a hysterectomy and one's going to have a womb. And so you're in the right place right now, listening to this video, hanging out with me, going like, what? You're in the right place if that number made you say, what? That's not going to be me. No. Girls, and you always say, put your hands on your womb and on your ovaries, and you're like, girls, you're safe with me. And then you put your hands on your breast, and you're like, girls, you're safe with me. Right? Because you don't want to be one of the 40 to 50% of American women that have a hysterectomy. And especially for non-life-threatening situations. All right. Woo! You're also, like in the right place when I'm talking about reaching into your womb and taking it out is like plucking a precious jewel out of your body. And you're in the right place if you see that is like a powerful place to be, and it's worth protecting, it's worth preserving, it's worth putting in the effort, right, to maintain, and it's worth teaching and sharing other people. Okay. This is a video. This is one video. This is one person, one perspective. I cannot offer every perspective. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer. Each one of us has our own life history, our own experiences, and our own unique situations. I just want to restate or say one more time that if you find yourself in the situation of deciding if hysterectomy is the right thing for you, the right decision, I encourage you to turn over every stone, get 1, 2, 3 opinions, and don't take it lightly. And if you decide like, no, this is really the right choice for my life and for my well-being and the continuation of my life, then do it with gratitude, and also gather more of your herbal allies and your other life-affirming practices to help you recover from that. As I'm talking, I'm thinking that should be a video. Recovery from a hysterectomy. That might be a good video. Okay? I'm going to have a sip. Before I jump into the heart of the situation here, the womb of the situation here, I want to say this is a live video, right? So I can't see your comments or your questions. If you have a question at the end of the talk, I encourage you to write the question at the end of the talk. If there are questions, I can save a little time for that. Heaven is moderating that, and so she can read those questions to me at the end, okay? All right, so just as an overview, you know, fibroids are a benign solid mass. They're also called myomas, and they are in your uterus. I'll go into more detail about their locations. Fibroids are benign, also just like how cysts, like ovarian cysts are benign, right? The word tumor does not mean that they are malignant or cancerous or even really dangerous, okay? What I want to say is that these fibroids can grow in your uterus, and oftentimes they're really small, but the most average size is about the size of a walnut, and then they can really grow really large, especially when we're in certain situations where there is a surge of estrogen, like when there is a surge of estrogen in pregnancy, and there's a surge in estrogen in perimenopause. So in menopausal women and perimenopausal women, I've done a video about this. So go to the YouTube channel under menopause. But I talked about how right before your estrogen falls, there's a peak of estrogen. It rises, and that's when a bunch of fibroids start to really grow. And then once they go into menopause, the levels of estrogen fall, and then the fibroids can go away. So those are like the two peak times, like pregnancy and perimenopause. But just as our life changes, just as our stress levels change, increase or settle back down, just as our stress and physical body change, so do fibroids. So just because you have a fibroid now doesn't mean you'll have them, and just because it's small now doesn't mean won't grow, and just because it's big doesn't mean it can't resolve. Based on the literature and what I'm seeing, little small fibroids seem to be manageable, right? And they can grow and shrink, but once they get really big, that's much harder to, and it would probably be a little unrealistic to assume that it's just going to shrink down without like real intervention. Okay. All right. Okay, so there you go. Cool. I write all this down, and then I say it much faster than I wrote it. So also, I write all this down in the blog, and so if you want more detail, then go to the blog post to read the detail. What I want to talk about now is that, like I already said, fibroids are not really fully understood, but what we do know is that fibroids grow in response to increased levels of estrogen. And so not only is when estrogen rises in pregnancy and perimenopause, but estrogen also is on the rise because of our environment. And so the primary causes of estrogen in our environment that's causing this rise, they're called xenoestrogens, right? And so xenoestrogens are synthetic. They're made from industry, right? Which is different than archaeestrogens, which are naturally occurring, that are produced by our body. Okay, so xenoestrogens, I want to talk about these for a minute. So I'm going to even read this right here. So the xenoestrogens, they mimic true estrogen, right? And so what happens is it interacts with the cellular receptor sites, and the process contributes to estrogen excess, and then it blocks the ability for your body to produce real estrogen. And then what happens then is it breaks down in your body, and then it's stored in your fat, right? And then when it's stored in your fat, it gets clogged up and lodges into your cells, and then it starts creating all this disruption in your cellular body and in your endocrine system. Okay. What are the causes? Where are these xenoestrogens coming from? So first and foremost, they're coming from like commercial farm raised animals and meat, right? They're coming from plastic bottles. They're coming from our cans that have plastic lining. They're coming from our makeup and our lotion and our hair products and our deodorant. And they're coming from our shampoo and our laundry detergent and our dish soap, right? They're coming from our pharmaceuticals. They're coming from oral contraceptives. They're coming from styrofoam. They're coming from all the spray cleaners. They're coming from pesticides. They're coming from herbicides. That's how they're coming in. So we're surrounded by them. But we can make choices, right? We can choose to eat organic food. We can choose to stop drinking out of the plastic water bottle. You know, that's the thing. I'm going to get into like some of the problems of fibroids and all these women, they want children and they want like fertility and they don't want to bleed and they want to feel great, and yet they're just unaware and they're drinking out of the plastic water bottle. It's like, and then right now as a midwife, all these babies, when I started off, I didn't see this, but then near the end of my, when I was tending births, I almost said end of my career, but I'm still working, not attending births. But I started seeing all these tongue ties, and then you research all these tongue ties, where are these tongue ties coming from? And they're coming from these xenoestrogens, they're coming from the plastics, right? And so when we drink our plastic water bottle, and then, yes, some of us recycle it, but a lot of women don't recycle it, and they want their baby, right? And then they don't want their baby to be all like tongue-tied, right? They want their baby to live in a beautiful earth when they're done, but instead we just perpetuate the problem. So one thing you could do in your power right now is stop drinking out of a plastic water bottle. Invest in the dang $20, I know, $20 for a water bottle. It's excessive, it's crazy. Get a glass juice bottle if you want to. But get a stainless steel water bottle or a glass water bottle. I'm going to stop talking about it, but I want you to do that. I get a heart or a thumbs up for that? All right. Okay, so what are the common symptoms of uterine fibroids? And we've talked about this in some of our other videos too. Common symptom, number one common symptom is pain with your menstruation and heavy bleeding, hemorrhaging with your menstruation. There's a video, I think it's called Heavy Bleeding or Spotting Between Your Periods. A menstrual period that lasts longer than a week, right? Another problem is just pain in your pelvis. And another problem is frequent urination and a challenge of emptying your bladder, because the location of the fibroid is like touching or leaning on or pressing onto your bladder, and so then it makes it so you have to go a lot but you're not able to empty. Same thing with your rectum. The location of the fibroid can be on the back of the uterus, and it can be pressing on your rectum, and so then you have back pain, you have leg pain, you have constipation, you have pressure, you have pain with sex, you have we can get into this too, also what happens in most of the time. Here, I'll just talk about this real quick. Here's the locations of the fibroids, and it'll help me talk about this next subject. So here, this will be your uterus. Here's our photo. Here's our visual display. So this is your uterus, and now you have some of the fibroids that are on the outside of the uterus. So that's called subserosal. So if this is my uterus and I have these growing on the outside of the uterus, so they're growing toward my abdomen. So the ones on the outside are going toward my bladder, on the back, toward the rectum. They're growing outside. And then if this is the uterus, this right here is the uterine wall. This is the muscle. And so there are some that are growing inside the muscle of the uterus. And then those are called intramural, like intermuscular. And then you have submucous, and they are inside your uterus. So they're growing inside your uterus where the baby would grow, or where your decidual lining is, right? The location and the size of the fibroids is important, because if it's growing on the outside, you might have the frequency of urination or constipation, but it's not going to affect your fertility, right? But if you have them growing on the inside of your uterus, it can affect your fertility in a couple of different ways. So, sometimes they can grow in and around your cervix. And so when that's happening, you can have pain with intercourse. And it's a challenge for the sperm to enter into your cervix. And so that interferes with conception. Sometimes they can grow, here are your ovaries, in the near the fallopian tube, so they block the fallopian tube, so it's really hard for the sperm to get to the fallopian tubes and fertilize. Sometimes they, once they're on the inside here, and you have all your early pregnancy hormones, so things just start to rapidly grow, so the fibroids rapidly grow too. Inside, they start to grow rapidly, and they kind of take up space, surface value, and so it's harder for the embryo to implant because the space isn't there for them. And each time that a placenta implants, it can only implant in that spot one time. So a woman that's had multiple pregnancies, like for example, multiple pregnancies, the first time the embryo can implant here, and the next time it can implant here, and the next time it can implant here, and the next time it can implant here. But if you have a fibroid taking up the space, it can't implant where it already implanted, and it can't implant where the fibroid is, right? So that's a thing. And then also, as a midwife, I've helped hundreds of women give birth at home, and with their ultrasounds, it's pretty common that people are like, oh, I have a fibroid. And the vast majority of them did not have a problem. Like, it did not interfere with their pregnancy, meaning they carried their baby to term, they pushed their baby out at home, and they didn't bleed too much. There might have been some heavier bleeds, but nothing that we couldn't handle at home. There was one case, where the fibroid grew so big that it was a challenge for her, and what happened in her situation was her labor pattern was incoordinated. So, like, the baby wasn't able to be in a good position to get down and get its head well applied to the cervix. And so that's what causes a good labor pattern, is the pressure of the baby's head on the cervix, and that stimulates a chemical, oxytocin, to contract your uterus. But if the head can't touch the cervix really well because something's in the way, then the labor pattern was really incoordinated. It was dysfunctional. It didn't work. And so this woman ended up going to the hospital to try to get augmentation, to have Pitocin, to try to help push the baby down and help make a good labor pattern. But it didn't really work out, and she ended up having a cesarean. So of the hundreds of births that I've been to, there was one cesarean. So just to not say that fibroids don't cause you a problem, because they can, at the same time, they don't always cause a problem just because you have them, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. I think I covered that. All right. So, and one other thing, back to the birth and the fibroid, one other thing that could potentially happen too is that fibroids grow, the baby grows, and before you know it, uterus is full. It's like big old uterus in there. It's full to capacity, doesn't have any more room. And so there is another elevated chance of preterm labor. And then when I start thinking of preterm labor, it makes me want to say African American women have a higher incidences of preterm labor, but they also have higher incidences of fibroids. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but they do. And so it's important to know about fibroids, and to know what you can be doing to help prevent them and help them not grow so big, right? Okay, so standard medical model before the year 2000 was definitely hysterectomies. And then we have like made major improvements. And so now major medical mainstream solutions, they're called uterine fibroid embolization. And so it's an outpatient procedure, and I'm not going to go into all the details because it's beyond my scope and I don't know how to do it. But essentially what you do is you go into the top of the thigh and you have an ultrasound or x-ray guidance, and you thread a catheter in and you find the vein that is feeding the fibroid, because the fibroid is growing because it has blood circulation, right? It's nourished by the blood, right? And so they find the veins that are nourishing the fibroids, and they inject these little like microscopic little fibers. And these little microscopic fibers, they interfere, they stop up, they clog up, they stop the blood flow, they clog the blood flow, so prevent the blood flow from feeding the fibroid. And so essentially what they do with the fibroid, how they resolve it, is they don't remove it, they just stop feeding it. They block the feeding of the fibroid. And so that's a lot less surgery and a lot less bleeding and a lot less. So that's the number one solution right now. The next one, remember fibroids are called myomas, and so it's called myomectomy. And instead of removing the uterus, they go in and remove the fibroid. But it's still major surgery, and it's still, risk of infection and bleeding and all that. And then also, depending on the size of the fibroid, once you remove it, you're also removing part of the uterine tissue. It can thin the uterine wall. And so when she gets pregnant, potentially, hopefully, that's kind of one of the reasons why she's doing this, is to improve her fertility. But when she gets pregnant, that part of the uterus is thinner, so she's at a higher risk for abruption, so she's more than likely going to have an elective cesarean. Right? So that's just that's what I'm saying, is like another intervention leads to another intervention, leads to another intervention, kind of perpetuating the problem. But at least you have your ovaries and at least you have your uterus, right? And then the last option would be to remove the uterus. There are probably situations that this isn't true, but as a generalized statement, it's usually better that the woman has her ovaries in her body. And so if you're in the situation and it's appropriate for you, keep your ovaries and remove the uterus. That's all I'm going to really say about that, okay? So, from a midwife perspective, from an herbal perspective, from a woman perspective, from the one that wants to protect your uterus perspective, and also understands that there's not one size fits all. Where do we start? What do we do? Where do we go from here? So we're going to let our food be our medicine. And this is really the foundational, you're going to build a healthy life and a healthy house and a healthy structure. You're going to build it one brick at a time, one step at a time. You're going to have a foundation. Your food is your medicine. So I'm going to give you this little list, and then I want to tell you a story about how food is my medicine. So the list, we've already talked about a couple of things. We already talked about fibroids grow because of estrogen and high levels of estrogen. So we want to eat foods that have no estrogen in them, right? So as a repeat, we're going to talk about foods that are organic because they don't have pesticides, right? The other foods that are low estrogen or no estrogen are, I always have a hard time saying this word, cruciferous vegetables, because they help detoxify your liver and they have no estrogen in them. They're famous, these are superfoods. Broccoli, cabbage, bok choy, kale, turnips, watercress, radish, arugula. You don't have to remember all this list because it's a long list. Go to the blog. You don't want to overcook all these things because you want their nourishment, so steam them or eat them raw. What else do we have here? So Also, we mentioned estrogen and the xenoestrogens are stored in your body and stored in your fat. So we need to detoxify your body, right? And so foods that help detoxify your body are going to be garlic and onions, carrot, beets, and of course drinking tons of water. And I'm going to get to it later, but essentially you want to sweat, and we want herbs to help detoxify our liver. And I'm going to go over those herbs. Okay, what else? We also, foods that are high in like beta carotenes. So they're colorful foods. They're mainly orange foods. So foods that have apricots, carrots, cantaloupe, what else? Pumpkin, squash, and then green foods like spinach. Those are high in beta carotene. And so those are real cleansing and detoxifying and nourishing. Because we don't just want to strip everything. That's the problem with detoxification. Sometimes people just want to strip everything. We need to nourish and clean at the same time. Okay, so then foods that are high in vitamin E, you'll want to eat those. Those are almonds and wheat germ and whole grain and hazelnuts and fish oil. And then you want all your anti-inflammatory foods, and two super common ones are pineapple, are super anti-inflammatory and delicious, and then so is rosemary. Rosemary is a wonderful anti-inflammatory food and herb. And one other thing that when you go on the internet, you'll see it everywhere, is green tea. So green tea has, it's called polyphenol, it's an antioxidant. Right? And so these antioxidants help cleanse and detoxify your body, and they help bring like life to your cells. Other things that are not listed on here that are antioxidants are going to be resveratrol. So that's going to be grapes, blueberries. Those are dark colored antioxidant foods. And what else? And then you want to consider taking your multivitamin, but you also really want to consider taking a B vitamin, a B complex, because in the very beginning I talked about how stress perpetuates all forms of disease. And so stress, B vitamins help your body like cope with stress, right? And so that you don't have adrenal fatigue, and so that you're not depleted and maxed out and always running on low energy. So your B vitamins are really essential for that. Okay. So those are the foods you should eat. And then let's talk about the foods you should avoid for fibroids. Okay. We want to avoid foods that have been, like I said, grown with pesticides. But the other foods also, even if they're not like massive farm raised, like mega industrial farm raised foods, either way, we definitely want to avoid all those meats, but you want to avoid red meat, right? So here's my list. I need to get back to it. Alcohol, red meat, tobacco, which is not a food, but you want to avoid that. And all sorts of like animal fats, and a lot of, not all dairy, but just a lot of fatty dairy things, like creamy and buttery and ice cream and stuff like that, which I do think fat is actually pretty good for you. But if you're dealing with fibroids, you want to look into that. That also makes me want to say something really quickly, is just because something's on the list that's right for you, you're going to have to make your own decision. You know, you read all the lists of all the healthy foods, and then you're like, oh, but that one food really doesn't do me right, and here's why. And trust that. Go with that. The other things you absolutely want to avoid are artificial sugars, you know, and then soy products. And that's soy sauce. That means Chinese fast food, right? There's a lot of soy sauce and soy tofu. You want to avoid that. And soy milk. And then I've already talked about plastic before, but especially plastic in a microwave oven and styrofoam, you want to avoid all those things. And I also want to say, like, just because you suddenly start eating this diet and you have a massive fibroid, it might not just shrink it right away, right? But at the same time, so there's no promises, but it's full of potential. And I want to share with you just a little bit about, like, from my own perspective, how essential your diet is from a life-saving perspective. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but this story came to me the other day. Like I said, I had an interesting week, so a lot's kind of been coming up. And years ago, I think I was 19, maybe I was 20, but I'm pretty sure I was 19. And I would have to say that was probably my lowest time in my life. And this isn't really about fibroids per se, but this is about how your diet can save your life. So I was in this situation where everywhere I looked was insurmountable. Like, you look here and you're like, oh, that sucks. And then you look here and you're like, oh my gosh, that's worse. And here, oh, it just keeps getting more and more and more, and it's like overwhelmed. And I didn't have the tools to cope with that. So I would just keep perpetuating the activity that got me deeper in my pit in the first place. And I was young and scared and sad and overwhelmed. And I needed help, and I didn't know how to get help, right? And so finally I kind of did an extreme event, and my parents came in and swooped in and were like, what? We're saving you. And they swept me away, and they, like 2 blocks down the road, and I moved into this van, and I lived in the van in their yard, and it was great because it was my van. I ended up living in that van for a long time, and so yeah, I legit have lived in the van. I've lived in more than one van for a long time. Kind of proud of it. But the point is, I lived in this van, but had they not like swept me away, that I don't know what would have happened. But the point is, I was out of control in all areas of my life, right? And this still like little voice that didn't make sense would keep coming to me as I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm overwhelmed and still having my unhealthy habits, right? And the little voice, be a vegetarian. Be a vegetarian. And I'm like overwhelmed. I have no money, living in a van, just overwhelmed, right? Falling apart. Be a vegetarian. Be a vegetarian. Like, how is that going to fix my problem, right? I need a job. I need a house. I need all this stuff. Like, being a vegetarian, I need somebody to like be nice to me, not be a vegetarian. So, but whatever. It just kept coming to me. Be a vegetarian. Be a vegetarian. And so what happened is I started to, all right, I'm going to take this one thing. I'm going to claim it. And I started becoming a vegetarian. And I stopped eating meat. It had nothing to do with saving the lives of an animal. It had nothing to do with like saving the earth. It had everything to do with me trying to take claim and control of one thing. Because the only thing, I couldn't control any other circumstance, but I could control what I put in my mouth. And if I could control the food that I put in my mouth, then I could control the drink that I put in my mouth and the cigarette that I put in my mouth and all the other things I was putting in my mouth that were hurting me, right? And it's not like it happened overnight, but claiming something of this one small, tiny act over and over and over again makes these little like micro shifts and adjustments in your perspective and in your energy field and in your ability to like, see opportunities. And that little micro shift opened me up just enough, just enough that I like drug myself in. Actually, somebody else drug me into the dojo, and I started training martial arts, right? And then that little shift, that shift of what I ate and being able to control what I put in my mouth. I was still putting the other things in my mouth, but I was able to control one thing. And then getting enough like strength to go into the dojo and start training martial arts to give you another little micro shift. So you start claiming more of your personal power and your personal strength and your ability, your confidence to like, okay, make decisions for yourself and to like start to claim your life. I can, without hesitation, absolutely say becoming a vegetarian in that moment, listening to that tiny little voice and doing the simplest thing, but doing it over and over, absolutely saved my life. It absolutely shifted me and adjusted me to be able to go to the next thing and to go to the next thing and go to the next thing right? And so when I give you this list of foods and you're like, you want me to do what? That's nothing. I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, absolutely. I want you to go to the smallest thing and start there. That's exactly where I'm telling you to go. Okay. All right. So the next thing to help you with if you have fibroids, it's in relation to your nourishment and to your diet, is your lifestyle and your exercise. We just talked about how the xenoestrogens are stored in your fat. So if we want to remove them and detoxify them, sure, we can eat foods, but we also have to sweat. We have to sweat, we have to move, we have to lose weight. I know, we got to do it. We got to lose weight. It's not so much for what you look like in the mirror, it's for how you feel and it's for getting those fibroids out. So you got to lose weight, and so that means walking, sweating, running, bike riding, whatever. Also, there's like belly dancing, and I'm a qigong lover, right? I'm a tai chi lover, so in qigong, belly dancers do this movement where we circle our waist around, and when we're circling our waist around, we are increasing the flow of energy, but we're also increasing our circulation and our awareness into our womb space in a way that improves fibroids. And reading Susan Weed talked about how this one girl, she started like exercising and doing a bunch of activities like I talked about, and like 3 months later her fibroids went away. I mean, that's just a story that somebody else told. It's not my story, but the point is exercise really matters and losing weight really matters. The detoxification and potential. Also, I feel like it's really important when you put your mind down into your womb space, and from a qigong we would use the word dantian. When you bring your mind into your dantian, you're increasing awareness, right? So improving your exercise, that is scientific, right? The next thing I'm going to say is more mystical, right? There's not a proof to this. But your fibroids are growing in your uterus, which is your sacral chakra, which is your second chakra, which is your sexual chakra. It's your place of sex, sensuality, choice. It's your place of safety. It's your place of femininity, of expression. And so then if you have all these fibroids, you could potentially be holding on to something. They could be something tightly gripped, right? Tightly knit. What is contained in that little fibroid? What treasure is inside there? Have you been trying to manifest, but then manifesting it a little bit ineffectively? It's like almost there, but not quite, and it's showing up in a way that's like a pattern that's not necessarily serving you, right? So in order to like uncover and reveal that and understand that and know that, you have to go into your womb space, right? You have to open up those chi channels. You have to open up that energy. You have to strengthen your pelvic floor and your reproductive organs. You have to tone it, right? So qigong practice will help you do that. So will meditation practices, right? So in order for you to start that awareness, I have 2 invitations for you. One is to join me in qigong class. I'll tell you about it at the end. It's for donation. It's easy. It's online. It's definitely for you. And then the other one is I recorded a guided meditation, and there'll be a link down below. It's called the Pelvic Bowl and Body Blessing. It's to help bring your awareness down into your body and to bless your body and gently cleanse it and nourish it, and to bless your body. Other ways, like just bringing your mind into your womb space, other things you can do, back to the science brain, other things you can do are, you can do hot compresses with castor oil. And so you soak your compresses, usually it's good if it's a flannel fabric, and you soak it in the castor oil and you lay the castor oil pack on your belly. And then, it's castor oil is so sticky, you put like a plastic saran wrap over it, and then you put a heating pad over it. Castor oil is really good at breaking up cysts, boils, fibroids. And so the heat and the penetration of the heat will drive that castor oil inside. Plus you bring your mind down inside and you start asking yourself, like, unraveling what's in there. What am I holding on to that I need to let go? What am I trying to give birth to? What treasures are stored, locked up in the mines of the, not like mines, but I mean like the mines down in the tunnel in the deep dark place. What jewel is in there, right? Some person is seeing it as a problem, but there's always, when every time we go into a deep dark place of like problems, there is a lesson and there's a treasure inside that, unraveling that treasure. Also, you could get help from another person. Other people can give abdominal massage. You could do an abdominal massage. You could have an acupuncturist give you acupuncture. You could have an acupuncturist do moxa sticks over your abdomen and your womb space. But still, even though they're doing the moxa on you on the outside, you are doing your inner work on the inside. That's how it's going to be more effective. Back to the stress reduction, you can't underestimate the power of stress, because what happens, you have your HPA axis, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your adrenals. They're all influencing your ovaries, they're influencing your hormones, your estrogen and your progesterone, right? And so when that axis is out of alignment, then you're riddled with PCOS, or you're riddled with fibroids, right? Or infertility, or pain, or you're bleeding too heavy, or a whole host of things. It all comes from a similar place. And so stress relief. So back to the qigong, being not only is it physical, increase your circulation, increase your qi, but it's also meditative, so it's going to help with your stress. Back to the B vitamins, back to getting healthy sleep, back to the meditations. Those are all going to help with your stress levels. Yeah. And let's talk about some herbs. Okay, so on the top of the list, I'm going to repeat a couple things. One is green tea extract with the polyphenols. That's really essential. A lot of the herbs that I'm going to talk about that are on this list are not herbs that I have for you. You're going to have to seek them in other places, and some of them I do have, right? So I don't have a green tea extract. You're not going to find that on my website, but you can find that somewhere. Also, black cohosh. You're not going to find that on my website either. Eventually, I think I'll make something, but I don't right now. So black cohosh has been utilized by midwives and herbalists throughout the ages. It is known as a woman's herb. In particular, it's really great for women that are going through perimenopause and into menopause. Black cohosh is really helpful for the pain. So when you have these fibroids in your uterus, it's heavy, right? It's heavy and full, and so it's sitting down on your back and on your rectum, so you feel like you're dragging, right? Not a dragon, but you're dragging, right? And so black cohosh helps with that heavy kind of pain in your back, that draggy, heavy feeling. Okay? And then you have vitex or chasteberry. Every video I've talked about that had something to do with menstruation or women's health, I've talked about vitex, because it's probably world-renowned, most famous herb for this. Partially why vitex is so helpful is that it helps with progesterone. When you have a synergy of progesterone and estrogen, then estrogen's not so dominant, right? And so it kind of harmonizes and synergizes the two hormones. And it helps with heavy period and heavy pain, and with regulating your hormones. So that's why vitex is a go-to. And then we mentioned one of the primary problems that women are having is they're having the pain of their period. So that would also be cramp bark. I didn't put it on here, but cramp bark is going to help with the pain, because it's also going to help maintain uterine tone. And it's not going to, when you have your uterus, you're not going to just be floppy. You're going to have a uterine tone without feeling so much pain. But pain really is, as much as it's a problem, it's not the serious problem, right? So the bigger problem is the bleeding. So the bleeding, you want to stop the bleeding, right? You don't want to bleed too much. Remember, if you bleed 2 pads in a half an hour, or you have free blood, like blood is running down your leg, 2 pads in a half an hour, that is considered a hemorrhage. Call your midwife, drink your yarrow tea, get it taken care of. Like, do not delay. That is an emergency. Okay, yarrow. Yarrow is wonderful at causing uterine contractions, and it's wonderful at helping stop bleeding. If you're gonna like claim your women's power and you're gonna start like doing it, plant an herb garden, and one of the first herbs you put in the ground is yarrow. Okay. Drink the tea. It's bitter, doesn't taste good. Drink it anyways, especially if you're bleeding. Take it as a tincture. You can make it with fresh plant, dried plant. It's all fine. And then another herb that we talk about in a different context sometimes is shepherd's purse. Shepherd's purse, you would be taking this internally. I often talk about shepherd's purse where you're taking a bath in it to absorb the active components, but in this situation, if you're bleeding and you're having painful menstruation, heavy menstruation, the shepherd's purse needs to be made from a fresh plant, and it's coming up right now, like in the spring. As of recording this right now, it's spring in May, and this is where the shepherd's purse is. So if you're hearing this, like, go look for it out in the fields, and you want to make a tincture out of it when it's fresh. And I don't have any in my yard, and I feel sad about that. Anyways, shepherd's purse is going to help coagulate the blood and help you not bleed so much. Red raspberry leaf is going to help over the long term create uterine tone, nourish you. It's not really cleansing, but it's very nourishing, and it's very helpful in stopping bleed too much. The theme, stopping bleed too much, that's the theme, right? And I'll just really quickly go here. Red raspberry leaf is going to be in women's balance. So is ashwagandha, which is going to help you with stress. The cycle relief is going to have cramp bark in it, and it's going to have motherwort, and it's going to help stop bleeding and help you with the pain so you don't bleed too much, and that your uterine cramps aren't so bitter and so harsh, but you shouldn't bleed too much. And then you have solid and serene. Solid and serene is going to help you with your ability to cope with stress when you're anxious and overwhelmed. Help you get a better night of sleep, and just help you manage your like intense emotions. I made a video about that too, intense emotions. And then there's menstrual harmony. And so I kind of want to talk about menstrual harmony because menstrual harmony has vitex in it. It has the next herb I'm about to talk about. It has ginger. It has red raspberry leaf. But it also has red clover, and when I'm reading about red clover with fibroids, some people are like, oh yeah, it's good, but other people are like, actually, it's not really that great because red clover has phytoestrogen, and if you have estrogen dominance, then you don't want a lot of more estrogen, right? So take that with a grain of salt. So actually, even though a woman is going menopausal and she's not dealing with a period anymore, but she's dealing with fibroids, and even though this title says menstrual harmony and she's menopausal, she's not going to think to take it, but this would be really good for that woman that's menopausal and still has menstrual or uterine fibroids. The other thing I have here is chlorophyll, because we talked about the theme of bleeding too much. We also talked about the theme when you bleed too much, then you become anemic, and when you become anemic, you become depleted, and when you're depleted, you're stressed out more, and you're depressed more, and you're overwhelmed more, and then it's really hard for you to make the simple change of changing your diet. It's really hard for you to show up to the qigong class. It's really hard for you to do anything because it's all overwhelming, right? And so chlorophyll is going to help with that. Chlorophyll is also very gently detoxifying and cleaning. So when you have all this stored fat, all these xenoestrogens in your fat, then chlorophyll can help cleanse your body, right? And so another things that are really cleansing on other herbs that promote circulation to your uterus and cleanse are ginger. And so ginger, like from traditional Chinese medicine, they use a lot of ginger, but ginger is warming to your uterus, and that's going to help with the circulation, and it's going to help with the excessive bleeding. But too much ginger can make you bleed too much, but there's not too much ginger in menstrual harmony. Be careful what you read. But the other thing that I want to talk to you about are the herbs to gently yet effectively detoxify your liver, because your liver is what is the organ of detoxification. And so those herbs are going to be dandelion, those herbs are going to be yellow dock, milk thistle. All having those, eating those right now, dandelion are all through the yard, and there's a bunch of thistle too. But eating those greens and those flowers and those roots, and having milk thistle seeds in your diet and in your tea and capsules is going to really help the whole process of detoxification. Okay, let's see, what else? I want to just remind you about if you soak 2 pads in a half an hour, seek care, drink your yarrow tea, and call your midwife. Even if you're not pregnant, call her anyways, or get care, get help. I want to remind you that all of these herbs are here for you. They're made for you with you in mind. You can get them. The links are all down below. And if they're not, be like, where's the link? Or just go to the website, birthsongbotanicals.com. And if you don't see it right away, put it up in the search bar, whatever one you're looking for. You'll find it that way. I want to remind you that I'm extending the invitation to join the qigong class. It is every Friday morning, 10 a.m. Central Time. There's a Zoom link down below. It's Zoom. It's fun. There's like a bunch of different people in there. They're like, some of them are like in their 70s and sit down, and some of them are like in their 30s and they have 2 little kids, and some of them, there's sometimes a man shows up. You know, there's some of them in their 60s. They're women. They're people that show up, and it doesn't have anything to do with fibroids, but it has everything to do with going inside, tapping into your womb space, and going into your center and radiating outward. It has everything to do with freeing up your blockages. It has everything to do with like claiming your power and standing in your truth and being a part of a community. That's what it's all about. And so you're invited. And also just appreciating you and asking that you share this video with women in your community that have fibroids, and that you push like and subscribe, and ask your questions in the comments, because this whole video came from 3 people asking a similar question. So maybe your question will be the next video. Maybe so. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to say thank you unless there's a question. No? Okay, well, remember, my friends, this is important. You're important, you're whole and complete. And until next time, drink deep and always walk in beauty.